Hello and welcome to Dish Shelved with Adam White. Coming at you a little sooner than the last time between videos. Uh, I've read a few more things here, so I thought I'd give an update on what I'm reading, as if anyone cares. Uh, but I read this, DC's Finest, the Justice Society of America for American Democracy. And it's an apt title. It's um, the first appearance of the Justice Society, and its issues. They appeared in All Star Comics #3 was their first appearance, and this has 3 through 12 in it. And so you get um, the first set of their stories, and each story kind of starts out with them as a group for a few pages, and then it's all individual stories of the characters, and then it ends up with a few pages of everybody. So they're usually split up doing their own thing in it, so it's kind of like solo issues for each one of them in it, but they're a lot of fun. There's a little bit of period racism in it, just in the way the Japanese are depicted, but this was at the height of World War II, so that's kind of to be expected. I mean, I'm not saying I like it, but it's just the way things were. But there's not a whole lot. But um, they also have a team. Their team kind of changes as it goes along, and they always talk about how Batman and Superman are reserve members, but they never actually appear in it, which is kind of strange because there would have been probably the two most popular characters for DC at the time. And it's interesting that they didn't join a group until the Justice League later on in the 60s. So that was interesting. But the Justice Society's always been my favorite team. And they've got the Golden Age Green Lantern, Dr. Fate, Hawkman, the Atom, and that's the original Atom, not the Ray Palmer Atom from the 60s. Uh, and Dr. Midnight, the original Sandman, the Spectre, the original Flash, Hourman, uh, just lots of real fun characters. And they even had Wonder Woman. They talk about uh, going to do their part for the war effort, and Wonder Woman joins the Justice Society, and they all go off and do spectacular things to help with the war effort, except for Wonder Woman, who stays home and is the secretary. So you've got kind of period sexism in there too, because out of all the Justice Society characters, with the exception of perhaps the Spectre and maybe Dr. Fate, Wonder Woman would have been by far the most powerful character in the group. So she would have done a lot more good out actually fighting than being at home and being a secretary. So there is a little bit of that in there too, which is a shame, but because it would have been more interesting to see her fight. But her Golden Age comic was really good too. I've got a video, that's probably my most watched video that I've ever done, is on Wonder Woman comparing the Golden Age to the Silver Age. It's in my backlog of videos if you want to check it out. Um, but they have all sorts of great covers, great art. Um, it's a little dark there. But there's Dr. Midnight, one of my personal favorites. I hate over here on this side, for some reason, Dr. Fate, during the course of these comics, they switch and make his mask from a full mask to a half mask so you can see his mouth. And I think that looks kind of dumb. And I don't know why they made that change in his costume, but they did. And I also didn't like when they changed the original Sandman's costume with the gas mask and everything. I really liked that costume. I thought it was unique to the heroes of the time. And they put him just in a generic set of tights. And it really didn't seem like Sandman anymore. I don't know if I can find... Yeah, there's no way I'll find it. But anyway, they do a lot of stuff to help out with the war effort, and they're always talking about, they spend one whole issue raising money for war orphans. And so, I mean, for American Democracy was an apt title for this comic, because it was really based around the World War II, and most of the issues had at least some tertiary involvement with the war. But that's fine. That's the way comics were at the time. I really enjoyed these. There's another DC Finest coming out sometime this summer, I think, that collects the next set of issues. I think it's 13 through 20 or something like that. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And this is a great DC Finest collection, and I highly recommend getting it. Now, also, while I was reading this, I also started reading up on some of my DC Archive editions. Now, this one I got recently and spent way too much money on it. But I've really, really wanted it because it has the first appearances and like the first 5 or 6 stories each of Johnny Thunder, Mr. Terrific, Wildcat, Dr. Midnight, Our Man, the Atom, and the original Red Tornado, which has nothing to do with the one you might be more familiar with. It's the android. But the original Red Tornado was like kind of part of a kind of a silly comic. What was it called? I can't remember now, but the Red Tornado I could have done without, just because it was part of a silly comic and it was done kind of as a farce of superheroes, and she really didn't have anything to do with the Justice Society for much. I mean, she did show up in the ones that I talked about the last video that I did, but I could have done without that and would have liked maybe one more story for each of the other characters in this. I thought the Wildcat ones were exceptionally good, except for the fact that they introduced a character after a few issues named Stretch, I think, that was like a goofy private detective for comedy relief. And I really didn't think the comic needed that. So it kind of took away from the Wildcat story and him being a championship boxer. And I just thought it was a really fun series. And it was still good when they brought Stretch into it, but I liked it better without it. Dr. Midnight was excellent. Fun story. Had almost the exact same origin as the Black Bat, which was a pulp character at the time. So it was as far as anyone knows, coincidence, because again, they came out around the same time. Our Man was fun. He had a pill that let him become a superhuman for an hour at a time, and he can only take it once a day. And that was a lot of fun. Johnny Thunder and his magic genie that he didn't know how to use and always ended up using it by accident. When he said the magic words, say you, which he would usually just say, you can't do that or something. And my favorite part of this, Johnny Thunder, was one time after he had called upon the genie, he said, I'm going to kick you in the next week. And he kicked the guy, and the guy disappeared. And then in the later part of the story, 1 week later, the guy reappears. So he literally kicked him in the next week. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun stuff like that in the Johnny Thunder comics. So it was a little more, a little bit more comedy in there. But um, there's Dr. Midnight. Uh, lots of great stuff in this, though. Just, it's the only time these stories have ever been collected, as far as I know, which is why I wanted it so badly. But it's the JSA All-Star Archives Volume 1. It's the only volume they did of it that I know of. I couldn't find any other volumes. But it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed seeing the first appearances of all these characters. Okay, I have some others too. Golden Age Starman, I've had this for a while, and I just haven't read it, so I'm getting ready to read it. I like the Golden Age Starman. Then you have the Golden Age Flash, which I've had, but I just actually read it, and it was a lot of fun. Seeing the original Speedster, and excuse me, his stories were all a lot of fun. He'd always find interesting ways to use his speed. Then there's the Golden Age Spectre, which I've read and I liked, and I will admit that along with some of the other characters, it just, all these original issues, even the Justice Society ones from the DC Finest edition, they're always just fighting regular people, basically. And one other thing I wanted to say about the Justice Society for America and Democracy is, one issue they fight Nazis essentially, and that was a particularly satisfying issue because, let's face it, no matter what time it is in history, punching Nazis in the face is always a lot of fun because Nazis are just despicable. So that was one of the most fun issues that there was, because they just beat the crap out of Nazis through the whole thing. So you'd see a little of that creep into some of these other editions too. But the Spectre, it was always interesting to watch him interact with the bad guys that he fights, the racketeers and stuff, because the Spectre is the literal wrath of God. So he kind of outclassed the villains that he was fighting. So there really wasn't much of a challenge involved. So it was really interesting to watch him. There's a great cover of him, More Fun Comics. But he always, I mean, it just was just a joke because he was so much more powerful than the characters he was fighting. Now, I love the Golden Age Sandman. I love his outfit. Uh, until they changed it to the tights. But this has them all. I think the whole thing, yeah, the whole thing of this one has him in his original costume. So that's really good. I think there was only ever one volume of Sandman, but which is a shame because it was a lot of fun. Later on, there was Sandman Mystery Theater, which was back in like the 90s. And who was it that did that? Matt Matt Wagner, and I can't remember the artist now, but that was a really great series. And the Spectre had a really great series by John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake back in the 90s as well. Uh, and that's a really good series that I'd recommend reading. Now, this one's a little bit thicker volume of Dr. Fate. You can see he's got his full mask on this one. Uh, these were fun. He, again, pretty much outclassed all the characters he was fighting. I mean, he would have some more mystical people that he would fight, but usually they were just con men. And we're talking Dr. Fate is like a high powered uh, individual. So this one was a little bit thicker. I think they collected more of his because I guess there wasn't as many, and they knew they weren't going to do any more volumes of it. Um, and then the last one I'm going to show you, the Golden Age Green Lantern. Although in the original, in the All Stars, uh, he actually left pretty early on and became a reserve member. Um, he and I think maybe the Flash left pretty, even though they were founding members, moved on pretty early and made room for like Hourman and Dr. Midnight, which I was glad because I enjoy those characters. There's 2 volumes of the Golden Age Green Lantern. I just read the first one, but it was by Bill Finger and Martin Odell. And they have a really good introduction by Marty Nodell in here, talking about how he came up with the character over a weekend when he was showing uh, samples to DC to try to get a job there. So it was a fun introduction to this one as well. But again, it was uh, it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoy the Golden Age Green Lantern. Um, I'm going to probably do a comparison of the golden, silver, and modern age Green Lanterns at some point, and just kind of point out some of the differences in those. But the golden age Green Lantern, I've got this, and I've got volume 2, which is the only 2 they did. And um, but the others are omnibus editions, so it's going to take me a while to read those. But um, anyway, I've gone on way too long on this than I'm meant to, but the Justice Society's a lot of fun, and if you do get any of DC Finest, I'd highly recommend getting this one because it's just a lot of fun, and it's a peek at things going on and the way things were in 1940s. This one was 40 through 42, um, and it's a lot of fun. I'll probably be talking about more DC Finest coming up, but lots of good stuff in here. I hope you'll check it out. And thanks for hanging out with me, and I will catch you next time.